Cisse's through and he scores! Shooted from outside the box! And what a strike! Middle, still with it, the shot, and it's in!
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into episode number 4 of the Old Bay Breakdown. I'm your host, Adam Gotkin, and we finally have a match to recap, a match to talk about. The Bobcats, back on last Saturday, drew Chattanooga FC 1-1 in their season opener. I predicted that. I will give myself that. I predicted that 1-1 draw on the 423 Soccer Podcast, the podcast with Chattanooga FC fans. It was a 1-1 draw, and for a really in-depth breakdown on a lot of it, I did an interview with Protagonist Soccer and Knights Who Say Nisa host Dan Creel. So I'll play that here at the start. We also talked a little bit about Flower City Union and their last game, the team that the Bobcats will be playing in their next match. And then a little bit of conversation, a little bit of talk about the U.S. Open Cup coming up next Tuesday at the very end. So I hope you enjoy the interview with Dan Creel. All right, everybody, we are now joined by Dan Creel here on the Old Bay Breakdown. There's a lot of ways that I could introduce Dan. I don't know which one to go with. The founder of the Old Bay Brigade, the Bobcat supporter group,
that's true.
Host of Knights Who Say Nisa, writer for Protagonist Soccer. I don't know which way to exactly introduce you, but there's so many ways. Dan, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, hey, Adam, thanks for having me. Any of those work. Any or all of those work, yeah.
All right, so as I mentioned, Dan, a big Bobcat supporter, and after that first match, just give me some of your initial takeaways versus the opener against Chattanooga.
Sure. I think first off, a massive revamp of the roster. Mm-hmm. I know they brought a core group of about a dozen folks back, but it was a little surprising to see how much turnover there was when they hit the field at Finley Stadium against Chattanooga. Felix Annan in goal. We knew Jake Dengler had left to go to Tormenta. He was replaced by Brandon Clegg. Actually, the defensive line, other than Clegg, the three familiar faces, and then everything above that, from midfield up through the attack, was completely new to the Bobcats. And I believe only Christian Cocker on the bench was a Bobcat from last year. So that was the first take. I think seeing the formation that Coach Rostello played against Chattanooga, I'm interested to see if we see a similar formation in this match they're coming up with Flower City Union. So above the four-man back line, it looked like we had two holding defensive midfielders, Andy Alvarado and Manny Gonzalez. And then Jocelyn Hussein was number 8. So he was on the field also. Sorry. Yeah, he's the one midfielder who's a holdover from last year. And then it looked like on the left wing was Darwin Espinal. Looked like on the right, Joseph Boone would drop back. He was a forward, would drop back on the right. And then up top was Amo up top. So that was the structure. And they played well against Chattanooga. I mean, Coach Underwood from Stumptown brought his tactics to Chattanooga, and he has way more to work with at Chattanooga, and it showed. Basically, it was that Stumptown high possession game on steroids. Chattanooga controlled the match. Had almost all the possession. Coach Underwood wants to keep possession. You get possession, he wants to take it away. And then that makes it really difficult to get through the midfield. So Maryland didn't get a lot of looks at goal. And I will chalk that up to Rod Underwood and Chattanooga playing a really, really, really good game. But they managed to get the goal at the end with Darwin Espinal's amazing free kick, which is something you get with Espinal on your team. That's what you want. So they come out of that match. I think they should be happy with a 1-1 draw coming out of Finley. They get points away. They keep 2 points. They keep Chattanooga only for getting 1 point. So I thought they played well. It was my favorite match of the weekend by far. Bobcats looked really structured, much more structured than they were last year. You could see them really keeping their shape. And even though Chattanooga was making regular runs into the attack, the defense wasn't scrambling nearly as much as they would sometimes last season. So that was good to see.
And, Darwin Espinal, those 2 goals, Now, you've been around NISA for a bit. You've seen a lot. So you've seen Coach Underwood a lot. Of course, he was at Stumptown last year. From what you've seen with his teams and then just other teams in the league, do you think that the Bobcats will be able to turn it on and really possess more in other future matches? Or was that maybe just how we see them this year?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think like I said before, it's going to be interesting to see if Coach Ristello changes the tactics against Flower City, because he might have been trying to. It's interesting. I don't know. He might have been trying a little bit more to keep kind of Chattanooga up, because he knew they were going to keep possession, keep them from getting too much into the Maryland penalty area. I think we're going to see more of Maryland in the attack dynamic with other teams and going forward. Yes, I think this was a way that I think what we saw against Chattanooga probably was specifically something they were doing to handle the Chattanooga game plan.
And their opponent for this upcoming week, Flower City Union, who lost 1-0 to Syracuse. That was the only match in the entire league that was not a draw, and that was at home to another one of the expansion teams. Dan, I know you were watching the Bobcats match for the first half, but from the second half, down a man, what'd you see from Flower City Union?
So I will say, so let's just quickly talk about Flower City. So Flower City is an expansion side, a new side. They are very young. They're very young, not a lot of professional experience. I think they only have 2 players who were with NISA last year. The rest of the team is really young college players, amateur club players. Kind of feels like Maryland last year, but maybe even less experienced. And so they were playing against a Syracuse Pulse team, who we now know, we figured out before that match, is basically kind of a NISA team of NISA pros. They're made up almost exclusively of that. So I think what we saw in that match was a local team kind of made up of younger players, more amateur players, against a team of veterans. And I think it showed. Like, Flower City was in it. They only lost 1-0. But they did go up a man when Syracuse lost somebody without, I think we were on the 60th minute. And it really didn't tilt the field much in Flower City's favor. It looked pretty much like they were playing 11v11 out there. What you would see with Syracuse was, so Flower City Union was playing a 3-5-2, and Bobcats played a 3-5-2 at the beginning of last year. And when you're going from those amateur levels to the pro levels, the physicality and the speed just goes up huge levels. And I think Flower City they handled it, but you saw their goalkeeper having to make quite a number of really excellent saves. And I think maybe against a team, the Pulse, a team of good NISA players, but they came together at the last minute. I think maybe against a team that is had a little bit more time to gel and get together, probably would have had probably would have more than just one goal against Flower City Union. I think I'm not sure where Flower City's goals are going to come from. I will say one of their players is a local player, Arian Sobers Asui, I think his last name is.
He played at DeMatha, I think. Yeah,
he was from DeMatha. Yeah, he went to school. He went to school at Florida Gulf Coast, and he was at Nova FC before he came to Flower City Union
with Brandon Clegg, who is the Bobcats' new center back.
That's right. So maybe Brandon has some information on how to deal with them. So I think 2 things for Flower City Union. So we should see Bobcats attack be way more dynamic against Flower City Union. They should be able to move the ball through the midfield much better than they did against Chattanooga FC. If that's not happening, I might be a little worried. I'm wondering if Sylvan Restello is going to move maybe one of those holding midfielders up higher. We'll see. But yeah, I think we'll see more from the attacking players than we did in the Chattanooga game.
Yeah, something that I noticed in the 3-5-2 that you're kind of talking about is, I'm completely blanking on the name, but the Syracuse winger who came over from Syracuse, or who came over from Cal United. Completely blanking.
Oh, Kwok. Is it Minjay?
Yeah, Minjay Kwok. It almost seemed like he was playing like isolation against the Flower City defense. He was able to get behind them very often. Almost maybe if, as you said, I don't know if the Flower City team is completely up to that level of athleticism and physicality that you get at the professional level yet. So maybe that's something that we can see the Bobcats do. Yeah,
I think so. And you see the goal against Flower City was by a long pass, I think from Kyle Newell to Jackson, basically got over the midfield and got the defensive line out of position, and it was a beautiful header by Jackson. Yeah, so I think we'll see. Kwok was kind of out there on his own. I think we might want to chalk that up to being a team that's new together and not really having kind of advanced tactics at this point. I think Maryland is going to be able to exploit that Flower City Union defense a lot more, and we'll probably should see a lot more runs through the midfield and probably long passes like that going after the Flower City Union goal.
Yeah, definitely. And so that's all I have for this matchup. It's crazy that it's coming up, but next Tuesday is the U.S. Open Cup match for the Bobcats versus the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. Dan, I don't know how much of an expert you are on the USL Championship, but they play the Riverhounds. The Riverhounds just drew Detroit City, I think, last week, who has a lot of NISA teams. How excited are you, first of all, for that U.S. Open Cup to see the NISA teams playing some higher division squads? And then from what you know, how do you think maybe the Bobcats could fare?
Yeah, well, number one, I'm super excited for this U.S. Open Cup. We haven't had it in a couple of years, and this is something special that soccer fans have that fans of other sports don't have. We have these cup matches, we have these tournament matches on top of league matches, and it's kind of what soccer is about, where you have teams from all the way down in the amateur ranks getting to play the MLS clubs all the way at the top in one big tournament. So yeah, it's really exciting. It's always fun, U.S. Open Cup matches, and part of it is seeing how your team at your level does against higher or lower teams. So yeah, I'm definitely excited for Maryland to get to finally experience this. I am not an expert on USL Championship, so I don't have anything more to say really about that. I do know generally the Riverhounds is a very good organization. Yeah. So it's one of the teams that is always going to be near the top of the Eastern Conference. They've made long runs into the playoffs. This is going to be a tough matchup for Maryland. I am really interested to see how Maryland's players play against USL Championship level players. It's honestly going to be interesting for me to see how well they match up.
Yeah, there's a number of former USL Championship players that have joined the Bobcats this year. So I guess we'll see how they can do. Dan, there he is. Dan, thank you so much for joining me, and looking forward to seeing you on Saturday at the Soccerplex. As the founder, as I mentioned it earlier, of the Old Bay Brigade, you no longer run it, but the founder of it. Do you have anything to say to the Bobcats faithful?
Yeah, definitely come out. You got to come out and support your team. This is your local team. People love the Bobcats, and probably the most important part of that as a fan is to come out and be in the stands and support the team, support the club. And make a lot of noise for these players. Yep.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining me. You can catch Dan. What is it? Twice a week now? On
now we're doing twice a week
podcast. Yep. All of the recaps, previews. I was listening to it today. It is the best place for any and all NISA news. So make sure to check that out with Dan. Creel is also joined by Dan Vaughn and John Howard Fusco. The best place to get all of your NISA news. So Dan, thank you so much for joining me, and looking forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Yep. Thanks, Adam.
And I thank you again to Dan Creel for coming on the show. It was great to talk to him. Again, make sure to watch or listen to the Knights Who Say NISA podcast. You can find that on Spotify, Apple, anywhere that you get your podcasts. It's great. Dan Creel, Dan Vaughn, and John Howard Fusco host that. I listen to it every single time that it comes out. So before we end up doing a bit more of a preview on the Bobcats Flower City Union match, I'll do a little quick blurb about the other two matches that we saw in NISA that did not include Maryland or Flower City. There were two, both on the West Coast. They were both 10 p.m. Eastern Time starts back on Saturday, the first of which, Cal United Strikers versus Valley United FC. That one was a 0-0 draw. And then the other one, another 0-0 draw between LA Force and the expansion Bay Cities FC. So really, there was not much scoring at all in the league this year. There were 3 goals in total in 4 matches. 2 of the matches went scoreless. One was 1-1, and then one was 1-0. So, we're hoping that that'll pick up throughout the league this weekend. But those other 2 matches, both 0-0 draws between Cal United Strikers and Valley United FC. So Albion and Michigan Stars both did not play this weekend. Those are the only 2 teams who have not played yet. Albion will start their season this upcoming week on Friday, tonight, against Valley United FC. That's at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Michigan Stars, they wait a while until they play their first match. Their first match is actually in the U.S. Open Cup on April 5th against Detroit City FC at Detroit City FC. So that'll be their first match of the year, NISA or not. So we'll see what they're made of there against a team in a division higher. Then we have to wait for the next week for them to play their first NISA match. But now a bit more of a preview of the Bobcats' upcoming match tomorrow against Flower City Union. So this will be Flower City Union's first ever away match. Their first ever away match. They lost their first home match 1-0 against Syracuse, and they got a man up at one point. About 60 or so minutes in, a red card issued to Syracuse, and yet Flower City, they just couldn't get anything going. As Dan and I were talking about, they were in about a 3-5-2, and it almost felt like they didn't have enough athleticism to both have all those guys pushing forward and then also stay back. And so they were, caught a lot of times with long balls delivered in that they really just couldn't do much about. And they were lucky, to be honest, to only concede one goal. Their starting keeper in that match, Steven Ortiz, had a great game in net. Or actually, sorry, it was Mikel Ortega, not Steven Ortiz. And he had 5 saves in that one. Did end up allowing 1 goal, but he had 5 saves. He had a really good match. And if Flower City Union is going to want to be able to compete against the Bobcats, he's going to have to play really well. Again, it was, as Dan and I were talking about, we just didn't really see where the offense will come from Flower City. They just struggled to really get anything going offensively the entire match. And that's what we saw from the Bobcats last year when they were playing their first professional season. And we've seen that a lot of the times from these expansion teams who are not bringing in a ton of guys with professional experience. Where they struggle the most is definitely offensively. And that's weird. And, you can kind of think about that however you want. I think that it's partially because it's just these guys they don't know. The finishing at this level is just a completely different story of where it is at the amateur level. The keepers are that much better, and so they just struggle to finish, and maybe it's a bit of a mindset thing, but these expansion teams really struggling to score when they don't have a ton of professional players. Where is the offense going to come from? That's the question. Arion Soberzasu, as Dan and I talked about, a forward, he started and had a shot. I think he's where it all starts. A local guy who played at DeMatha, ended up going to Florida Gulf Coast University and had the 3rd most points in program history. He's a guy with a lot of pace, a lot of skill, and if anyone is going to score for Flower City Union, I have to guess that it would be him, although we can only wait and see. That'll be interesting. Felix Anana, I'd assume that he earned his place to start in net again, although I wouldn't be too surprised if it's Christian Kalker in goal just because of how good he is consistently. But that'll be interesting to see. Another thing that I'm looking forward to for Flower City is they actually know what they're going against in this match. AC Syracuse do not release their roster until the day before the match. And so how are you really supposed to do that much scouting? How are you supposed to figure out another team when you don't even have their roster? So maybe now Zach Gagliardi, the manager, head coach of Flower City, will be able to do a lot more after he's able to scout the Bobcats. But, we really don't know, and we won't see until the time comes. And I'm interested to see what happens in that. Now, the big one, the U.S. Open Cup versus the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. The Riverhounds have had a really good start to the year. They are 2-1-0 or 2-0-1. I always get confused on where the draw is. They have 2 wins, 1 draw, and no losses. They beat Memphis 9-0-1 and Hartford Athletic 3-0 and 2-1, and then they drew Detroit City 1-1 in Detroit back on last Saturday. Tomorrow night, the same time as the Bobcats are playing, they play Loudoun United in Pittsburgh. It'll be interesting to see what the result of that match is. But the Riverhounds have had a really good start to the year. They're currently in 3rd in the Eastern Conference behind Louisville City and the Tampa Bay Rowdies. 2 teams, though, that have played an extra match, so they have a chance to get up into first. One thing I will say about them, both of their wins, the other team had a red card. So the only matches that they've won, the 2 are both against teams who had 10 men. And it's not easy to win a match. It's not easy to score. It's not easy to defend when you have 10 men. So if the Bobcats can play a clean match, maybe they have a chance against the Riverhounds. Hopefully we'll be able to go more in-depth to them and maybe do a specific U.S. Open Cup preview short episode of the Old Bay Breakdown. I can't confirm that, but maybe we'll do that. So I guess that could be an option for some more preview on that. I won't go too much in-depth there, but I know Riverhounds have so much coverage, and we'll definitely try and do more before that match starts on Tuesday. So Bobcats go into this weekend against the bottom-placed team in the league, Flower City Union. The only team that did not get a point that played, and the only team with a negative goal differential, losing 1-0 to AC Syracuse. Still time to get your tickets at MarylandBobcatsFC.com. It is a great night out at the Maryland Soccerplex, a 7 p.m. start time, and we hope to see you all there. So once again, MarylandBobcatsFC.com. That's where you can get your tickets, and we thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, share with all of your friends, and we will see you next week for episode number 5. That'll be coming up for the Old Bay Breakdown. Hopefully we can be talking about a Bobcats win. And so with that, have a great Friday, and I'll see you guys at the Soccerplex tomorrow.